In the latest Direct, Nintendo and Pokemon Company finally revealed more information regarding Pokemon Sword and Shield. My early impressions, it's truly shaping up to be a worthy introduction to mainline Pokemon games for dedicated home consoles. I noticed a fair amount of changes, many of which I've been asking for years in videos on this channel. I want to talk to you guys about those changes, as well as what could be yet to be revealed that would line up with all the information that we currently have. To begin with, they did more to increase the scope of the games than I expected them to. The world looks to be more realized with bigger populations of people and Pokemon, as well as offering more detailed environments. That's just at first glance though. We didn't really learn how NPCs would behave at all. From the looks of the footage, NPCs from the Galar region look to still be pretty stagnant in the grand scheme of things, but in fairness, looks can be deceiving. They tricked us before with the initial reveal trailer looking to be less than what the game is now, so maybe there's more in store for the way this generation of Pokemon handles the people in the world. I'm hopeful for the people in the game world having things to do in their day-to-day lives rather than them just being in one set position for the entirety of their existence. Beyond the many generic characters that are needed to fill out the world, we also got some reveals of a couple key supporting characters as well. First of all, just as I suspected in my last Pokemon Sword and Shield video, our rival, Hop, is going to once again be one of those rivals that just takes a back seat to what you're doing as a trainer. I say this because it's been confirmed that he will be choosing the starter Pokemon that is weak against your starter Pokemon when you start your journeys. This, at the very least, will mean, at least in the early game, rival battles will be way too easy. But again, I have hope that it won't stay that way due to a relatively small character detail that we got during this direct, and that's from the very beginning. Your rival strives to be more than what has been the norm in Pokemon releases as of late, and that's because his older brother Leon is the current Galar region champion, and he plans to follow in those footsteps. Leon specifically makes me wonder if fame will be a factor in this game. Will you begin to garner a fan base as you become a more accomplished trainer in the Galar region? Will I be able to get a sponsor so I'll never have to actually pay for a Pokeball ever again? Probably not, but you can't deny that it would be cool. And due to the stadiums full of Pokemon fans cheering you on, it's not entirely unlikely. Back on the subject of Gen 8's rival situation though, the official website for Sword and Shield seems to suggest we may have another rival to contend with in addition to Hop. And if that's the case, they will most likely be the one to pick the Pokemon that's strong against your starter. Maybe they'll be affiliated with whatever the enemy team ends up being in a similar way to Gen 2 Silver, or even Gen 7 with Gladion. By the looks of the trailer, there's a chance that Pokemon may be joining Breath of the Wild and transitioning to having occasionally voiced dialogue based on those lip flap animations that can be seen, which I think could be another thing that adds to the overall scope of Pokemon Sword and Shield, and in my opinion could be a welcome addition if done well. They definitely won't go the Pokken route and voice the Pokemon, but the prominent NPCs, as well as Pikachu, may be voice acted, and I'd welcome that. The professor of the region is Professor Magnolia, but yet again, it sounds like we're not getting the full story here because the Sword and Shield website describes her as the preeminent professor of the Galar region, and that would mean that there are other professors in the region. Of course, there's her granddaughter Sonia, but she's said to be the professor's assistant, not a professor herself. Also, there looks to be another lab on the Galar map, so I'd bet there's one other professor with a different focus than Magnolia, who dedicates her studies to Dynamax Pokemon, a new form for Pokemon that can be used once per battle for 3 turns at a time and is limited to gym stadiums and other open areas. This has to be the one major feature that I'm almost completely uninterested in. I don't really see the appeal of having a giant version of my Pokemon. Granted, to be fair, it wouldn't necessarily be new territory for Pokemon. I'd say totem Pokemon were a precursor to this idea, and giant Pokemon have been explored more times than I can count in other other Pokemon media. But I digress. The concept of Dynamax Pokemon seems to be a combination of Mega Evolution and Z-moves, being that it transforms your Pokemon and also changes the properties of their attacks beyond just a simple stat boost. In the screenshots Pokemon Company released, it's possible to get an idea of how this mechanic works. First off, in this example, Grookey received a 20-point boost in its HP, which will probably be a flat percentage increase when it's all said and done. Its attacks are changed to what is deemed to be max attacks, which look to be separated into attack and defense types, with the normal damage dealing attacks changing to Z move like variants of their given type, and non-damage dealing attacks being defense based. Grookey's moves here in particular change from Scratch, Razor Leaf, Growl, and Taunt to Max Strike, which is a damage dealing attack that also lowers the opponent's speed stat if they get hit, Max Overgrowth, something we don't know much about, and then 2 Max Guards. What do the rest of these moves do? We don't quite know yet, but I'd be willing to bet that, again, they're reminiscent of Z moves. Like I mentioned, one of the only places that Dynamax battles will be taking place is during gym battles, which, apart from the Dynamaxing, of course, seem to be relatively unchanged from the traditional gym battles. The only other notable aspect of gyms would have to be the massive crowds. Pokemon Company seems to be really emphasizing the inclusion of these crowds and the importance the people of Galar seem to place on Pokemon battles, so maybe that bit about having fans wouldn't be too far-fetched and could potentially play into these gyms in some way. Though I'm personally not a huge fan of this Dynamax mechanic in isolation, its inclusion did undeniably lead to max raid battles being introduced in Pokemon Sword and Shield, which can be done with NPCs, or if you can grab a friend or 3 other players locally. And or if you have a Nintendo Switch Online subscription, you can play it online as well. There's talk from fans doubting it'll be playable with friends online, but like, honestly, that's sort of baseless. Decisions made for Mario Maker 2 don't have anything to do with Pokemon, separate entities that operate autonomously from one another. At any rate, max raid battles are different from Dynamax battles, not only because of their cooperative nature, but also in the sense that the raid Pokemon won't lose their Dynamax form after a set amount of turns, and they'll have additional attributes and abilities that normal Dynamax Pokemon won't. One member on your team can Dynamax their Pokemon, but it'll be limited to only them in that battle for the 3-turn limit I mentioned before. Also of note, some Pokemon will need to be defeated in raid battles before they can be encountered in the wild otherwise. The most interesting part of max raid battles for me, though, is the place where they take place. the wild area. This new feature is what I hope to be one of those things that Game Freak implements from time to time that begins as a small test, but later evolves to become a core staple of the franchise. Much in the way double battles began and are now the official Pokemon Company sanctioned way to play competitively. In the wild area, Pokemon will roam the overworld, which Pokemon that will spawn is dependent on not only time of day, but location and the weather as well for the first time in a Pokemon game. The overworld allowing for us to visually find Pokemon before you catch them has been enhanced in Sword and Shield in a few obvious ways as well, with the biggest being the ability to freely move the camera in the wild area. Secondly, physical features of the Pokemon you can find there being clearer, like gender differences and presumably attributes like shininess. The weather changes on a daily basis, keeping the spawns more dynamic than what will be seen in the more traditional wild encounter areas. In my first official Sword and Shield video, I mentioned that the Galar region map seemed to have an area that looked to be a step in the right direction toward open world exploration in the Pokemon series. The wild area being announced confirms that. Now the question is, what else will you be able to do in the wild area? They alluded to max raids being one of the things players can do here. What else is there? I want to race my friends on my bike that is apparently a Rotom now. I want to be able to set up camp and team up to find ingredients for food. I want to be able to do multi-battles against NPCs. I want to be able to play new mini-games to EV train Pokemon that double as entertaining things to do with friends, i.e. bring back the Lickitung Pokemon Stadium game for HP EV training. Whoever wins gets the highest EV boost. Go wild. It is the wild area after all. Speaking of catching Pokemon and all of that, they also revealed a few new Pokemon, about 50 overall, with 7 new ones, including a new normal sheep Pokemon named Wooloo that rolls around the overworld, which in my opinion makes it the best Pokemon sheep by default. It may be cruel to catch and battle with it though, since it's described to dislike conflict. but like, whatever, I guess. Maybe just catch a horde of them and make your own clothes, since they're absolutely going to be overpriced in this game, just like they are everywhere else. Gossifleur and its evolution Eldegoss, grass-type flower Pokemon that apparently contribute greatly to the health of people and Pokemon in the Galar region. Drednaw, a snapping turtle-looking thing that probably has trust issues since it's said that trainers frequently abandon it for being too much to handle. And potentially my favorite, Corviknight, a flying steel demon bird thing that will apparently be our mode of flight transportation. Finally, we got the reveal for the Sword and Shield legendary, Zacian, who just straight up has a sword in his mouth, and Zamazenta, who has a dumb shield for a head. Can you tell which one I'm gonna get? The day before this direct, I asked the F4 community, you should follow me on Twitter and join us on Discord if you haven't already, by the way, a question about where they think Pokemon Sword and Shield will fall in their list of top Pokemon games of all time. Here are some of my favorite responses. After all that I've seen, I think this game has solidified a B at least, and could honestly achieve S tier if they just make a few more right choices when it finally releases on November 15th. What do you think about what we've seen from Pokemon Sword and Shield so far? Are you 100% in, or are you still not sold just yet? Let me know why in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to click the like button, ring the bell, and subscribe for more videos like this every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want even more content, subscribe to our podcast channel for new podcast episodes every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. This week, we're talking about E3 predictions and also more about this direct. If that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and check it out. Okay, that's it for me. See you next week, or Saturday if you subscribe to the podcast channel, which you should. Subscribe to the podcast channel. Okay, goodbye.